Yeah, so welcome everybody to Intro to Vue.js Workshop Part 2. If you missed last month, we did Part 1, where Tracy and Chris did a great job just sort of talking through like the basics of Vue, and and if you didn't know, we're setting this in Vue 3 in particular. So there'll be some things discussed as far as some changes, but I'm looking forward to what they have for us today. So in case anyone here is new, as far as the organizers, my name's, I still need to change that slide. Oh god, I keep forgetting.
Again.
I know. So I'm Ben. I'm currently at, so I left Cypress a little while ago. So I'm at Netlify right now. You might know me because of my work on the Vue core team, primarily doing work with docs and the team itself. If you're looking for me on the Internet of Things, you can find me at BenCodeZen. Tracy, on to you.
So yeah, I'm Tracy, and I'm a front-end developer at Bloomberg Industry Group.
Crap.
Hey y'all, my name is Christian Guerreri. I am a lead front-end engineer at Politico. And before we go to Jack, Ben, how long was your tenure at Cypress? Out of curiosity.
It was like half a year.
Half a year? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey y'all, I'm Jack Coppa, also lead front-end engineer at Politico, and Ben accomplished more, I'm assuming, at Cypress in 6 months than I will at Politico in 8 years. So
probably.
It's all good.
That's true for all of us.
Y'all are too much. All right. So as far as updates, we have luckily actually upheld the 1,000 number. We've always been afraid that it'll just drop like into that 99 range, and just like every other month would be back and forth. But really glad to say that it looks like we are holding strong at it. So it's been an incredible journey. We are coming up on 3 years in a few weeks. So kind of insane to think that's how much we've done since then, having a meetup every...
It's really been 3 years? Oh my God.
It's almost been 3 years since Chris made the observation of, hey, there's no VueDC.
I think what happened was I just said it too often, and then Ben was like, I'm just doing it. I'm just going to do it.
Let's just register. What's the worst that'll happen?
Oh, it feels like it's just been 3 years that we've been doing these online meetups. I can't, wow.
Oh gosh, yeah. The online meetups have made it, yeah. But I'm really glad we found a way to transition, and it's been great. And I think certainly if we do go back to in-person, I mean, we've kind of got the remote thing down. So unless we have really bad internet, I think we'll continue trying to at least give other people the chance to attend remotely.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, so
trivia. We have trivia. We discovered trivia.
Yes, thanks to Jack for hosting, and he'll have some great questions for us this month as well. So yeah, generally we try to meet on the third Wednesday of the month, but if anything changes, just keep track of our events on the meetup.com page. As far as support goes, just to reiterate, we have our website, VueDC.io. There you can find more resources as far as our Discord, a meetup group, and then we're on Twitter and YouTube as well. So I think the key one, as far as resources go, we are pretty active on the Discord channel. So if you have questions, we try our best to help out. So keep track of us there. And then YouTube, definitely we try to put up all our recordings on there. So good things to bookmark. As far as upcoming meetups go, so December, we'll be hosting our holiday hackathon session. So basically, we'll probably be bringing along some prompts, and we'll be building things with Vue 3. Maybe if we're feeling ambitious, we'll maybe take an exploration into Vite as well, and then just let people play around with that. So it should be a fun time where people can code along and sort of watch things as we build things. So if anyone has any ideas for things they might want to see built or whatnot, please feel free to submit those to us, and we're happy to accommodate as best we can. In January, Jack will be gracing us with his TypeScript updates in Vue 3 talk. So I'm looking forward to that because, as you all know, or in case you don't know, Vue 3 has been rewritten from the ground up using TypeScript. But just to clarify, big disclaimer, you don't have to use TypeScript. It's just a lot easier to work with TypeScript in Vue going forward. So good stuff with that. If you're interested in speaking, even if it's a lightning talk, and you just want to get some experience, honestly, remote events are a great way to get started. In a lot of ways, it's a lower barrier of entry. I know it can be kind of scary to be talking at a screen, but if you need help with speaking, please reach out to us, and we'll do our best to assist you. JetBrains raffle. Yes, so we have I think 8 people here. So if people are interested in a JetBrains license, please go ahead and message us to the panel your email address. Unfortunately, we can't do it by name based on just because it's harder to track. So if you're interested in a JetBrains license or know someone who could use it, basically JetBrains is one of our sponsors. They give us free licenses for each meetup. And so, yeah, happy to, please send us your email if you're interested. And with that, I pass the buck off to Jack because it's trivia time.
Did Brad make a leap at the end there?
Yes, he probably did.
There we go,
Brad. Nice job, Brad.
Very nice. Tracy coming in nicely right at the edge there.
See, if you would have had more soccer stuff, I would have had a shot.
Yeah, more soccer stuff, I guess, is the takeaway. Very nicely done, everyone. Thanks for playing Trivia Round 1. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to our expert for the evening. Chris, take it away.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much. I am going to share my screen here in a moment. Desktop 2. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome.
That's great.
Okay. So hi, everyone, and welcome. For anyone just now joining us, I don't know if it was the case or not. My name again is Christian Guerreri. I'm a front-end lead engineer at Politico. Tracy Holinka is also worth mentioning. She did the workshop part 1, and a lot of these slides actually as well. I put a lot of this together based on a lot of work that she had done previously. So thank you so much, Tracy. I really appreciate it. Couldn't have done this without you. So we're going to be continuing an interactive workshop where we'll be building a Vue 3 to-do application from the ground up. So just to recap from part 1, I'm going to pull up. So this was the last solution from last month's meetup. So here we see a simpler Vue implementation in its simplest form. Vue 3 is being loaded via a distributable over the CDN. There's no build process here. It's just straight up JavaScript and CSS all in one HTML page, rendering some Vue components. So it's simple, it's statically rendered Vue application. The data is stored in JavaScript. So no functionality here, but this has helped us from the last month to more easily understand the building blocks to coding in Vue.js. So as we mentioned in last month, when an application is utilizing Vue to add to an already existing application, this is a great methodology to just get up and running really, really quickly. So today we're going to be going through a bunch of new things, but like last month, we'll walk through each feature one at a time, and you'll have some time available to do an exercise as we move along. So first up, let's talk about Vue CLI. So what is a CLI? It stands for Command Line Interface. There's a long history to applications having CLIs and using CLIs. But in terms of Vue.js, our goal is rapid Vue.js development. We can scaffold projects interactively, and we can use Vue CLI to manage applications that have already been built by interactively adding or removing pieces of the application, all via the command line. Vue can use a whole world of external packages. And so Vue CLI helps with simplifying that configuration. We call it zero configuration of all those external pieces of code, in addition to rapidly creating and building new applications. So if you look at Vue CLI's repository, you'll notice that it's a mono repo. It's made up of dozens of packages, but some of its main components are listed here. Obviously, you have Vue CLI itself. So these are the package names at Vue/CLI. And that's a globally installed NPM package that provides the user with a number of Vue commands, such as Vue create, Vue serve, and Vue UI. The last one being particularly interesting and added maybe a year or two ago, where you get a full GUI inside of a browser rather than a command line. There is a CLI service, which is a locally installed NPM package that is included when you first create a project. It's built on top of Webpack. It's used to load CLI plugins. And the command Vue-CLI-service is used to start up or build a Vue.js project. And then lastly, you have a swath of plugins. These are NPM packages that can provide any number of features to the Vue.js projects and the Vue.js ecosystem. And they almost always appear as @vue/CLI-plugin-. And you'll see those in your package JSON. So to sum up, really all we're going to care about today, or we're going to focus on today, or at least right now, is Vue Create, which is the way that you instantiate a new project using Vue CLI. So before we can use it, we do have to install it. I'm not going to expect people to do this now, but I wanted you to know about it. Obviously, any of these new front end things are going to require Node. And then optionally, you can grab Yarn. We definitely recommend it. It's a lot more performant. It has lots of new benefits, I guess I'll just say, over NPM. And if you have it installed, Vue will use it by default. Next, you'll want to install Vue CLI. And so that's done pretty easily by just these commands. This is installed globally so that you can use it anywhere in the command line. You can also upgrade Vue CLI if you have an older version and you're just now trying out Vue 3, since that's a new beast. You might need to upgrade Vue CLI in order to get into building Vue 3 projects. So that's usually pretty straightforward. I haven't had any problems with it. I'd love to know if others have. So, and of course, you can do that with both NPM and Yarn. And then once you have it installed and you think you're ready to go, you can check your version with Vue-version. Highly recommend checking out the guide. There's going to be a lot more there than I'm going to talk about today. And it can get pretty complicated, but there's a lot to see, and there's a lot that it can do. So this is going to be a quick little rundown of creating your first project. And so what we do is we run Vue Create, and then the last keyword is the name of the project. It's also the folder of the project where it'll end up going into. And so it immediately gives you this nice interactive interface where you can choose between 3 different options. The first one is the legacy Vue 2. The second one is Vue 3. And then you can also choose to manually select every feature. So here I choose manually select, and it takes you to the next step. Here I'm going to keep everything set up as default. And what we'll see later on when we're using Code Sandbox is that these same defaults are used for those projects as well. So I won't go too deeply into what these options do, but it's nice that they're all right here and available to you. And as you turn on and turn off any of these options, your entire project will integrate those plugins. So here I just leave everything set to the default. And at the next step, I'm going to choose Vue 3. And then for linting, I'm just going to leave it alone. I don't need the configs. I'm just going to use Vue's standard configuration. Same thing here for linting on save. And something that Code Sandbox does is it puts all of the config files into the package JSON. So I did the same thing here. And then on the last step, you can choose if you want to actually save all of these options that you've gone through so that you can use it again really quickly from that very first step. It'll show up as an option. All right. And so that gets running. And I'm going to go ahead and skip through this if I can. All right. So this is towards the end of this creation process. And so it just outputs at the very end. It says, these are the 2 things you need to do. Just CD to your folder that it's created automatically for you. and then run yarn serve. And obviously, if you only have npm, it'll use npm instead of yarn. So here you can see the files are created in this folder. And we run yarn serve. And so that's starting a Webpack dev server with these nice, handy URLs that are available to us. And so with that running, you can go to a browser and see your application. It's pretty easy. So I do want to very briefly go through the Vue CLI structure. And this is going to kind of introduce you a little bit to Sandbox at the same time. But what I'm going to do actually is use Chrome here and do create Sandbox. And you get lots of options of lots of different other platforms and different frameworks. But we're going to choose Vue 3. And without using a single command line, I now have a Vue 3 project in the exact same way that I just showed you. So that's kind of cool that you can just do this really quickly. So you can see the folder structure over here on the left. This is basically like VS Code if you're used to using that. And if not, it's a great way to learn it because it's not physically installed on your system. It's all in the browser. But you'll see a bunch of files here. And I don't want to dig too deeply into these. But the important ones to know about is your index.html, which is what will be used to serve your application. We have our package.json, which is listing out all of our dependencies, and you can actually modify this and change those, and Code Sandbox will update your project. We have a README, obviously. The entry point for our application is main.js, and you can see it's importing a Vue single file component, which we're going to talk about in a second. That component has is basically also taking in a child component, and this child component is the majority of what you're seeing in this preview over here on the right. And so that child component exists here. So pretty basic, pretty simple. And what I want to do, let's go back to this. Are there any questions? I have lots of question slides just to make sure that everyone's cool.
Yeah, I think you're good for now.
Cool. So now that you've seen what Vue CLI does, we need to kind of know like what is the benefit of doing this, and the real benefit is using single file components and not worrying about how to set all of that up. We can just jump right into using single file components. I have skipped
Basically, you mean you can avoid Webpack, maybe, right?
Yeah, Vue CLI is zero configuration, so and it's using Webpack behind the scenes. So exactly, it does a good job of setting all of that up for you.
Yeah, Webpack is just.
Let's see here.
Yeah, so we just actually now sadly are converting our main app into Vue CLI, and it's been kind of complicated because we kind of had to roll our own configurations, and yeah, it's kind of especially with Apollo and some of the other things we have. It's been kind of interesting. I'm not the one doing it because somebody else volunteered. I was like, that's great because I don't want to deal with it. But it's been kind of interesting. So
with single file components, right? So the cons to that are that the components are global. You can't modularize them really in any simple way. They use string literal templates, which means that you're not going to get things like syntax highlighting. You're not going to be able to see errors in your code. Interestingly, they also did not include CSS in Vue components. So you're relying on that global level of CSS rather than scoping CSS to individual pieces. And then obviously there's no build step. So it's sort of what you see is what you get in terms of loading your HTML file. So this is an example of a single file component. You have three main sections. You have a template, a script, and a style tag. And so this code is modular in that the things that are important about this individual piece of code is all within itself. We get nice syntax highlighting in the template. We have component scoped CSS. So this CSS can be scoped to only this module, this component, rather than globally. And we also get preprocessors in our build time. So we can use libraries out there that are built for looking at things like this component and making sure there's no errors and that sort of thing. So so as mentioned in our part one, what you see here on the left is our standard Vue component, and these are named reusable instances of Vue, basically. So they accept all the same options that you would have in a root Vue instance. And so while that's fine for a small and even a medium-sized application where JavaScript is being used only to enhance a simple application, in a more complex project, you're going to want to be using single file components instead. So templates are pretty much the same here as well between our Vue component architecture and our SFC architecture. The only thing you'll notice here is the use of Pascal case instead of the more HTML-friendly all lowercase. I won't get into that, but it is what's preferred. When we get into the JavaScript of a Vue component, you can see again that we have this static data, but there's a bit more JavaScript to the SFC, a little bit more boilerplate, but all of this is standard modular JavaScript, so it's actually not too nuts. And you're going to see this over and over and over again with all SSCs. And so like the Vue create app method that's used to instantiate the application in our Vue components example that we've seen before, on the right, we have our main.js file that's acting as the entry point to instantiating the Vue application. And it's using that same create app method. Here we're importing app.vue to render the root view of the component of the application. And like Vue components, we're mounting the application to a div with an ID attribute of app. So for our child components, we have organizers.vue, which is something we're going to create. We share almost the exact same template. And you can see that with the Vue components, we're not able to do things like syntax highlighting and error checking because the template must be delivered inside of this string literal. In our SFCs, however, since the Vue file can be processed, we can use a template tag and standard HTML, and that gives us that full tooling just as if it was an HTML file. And finally, the JavaScript for our Vue component versus the SFC, it's pretty much identical. So the exact same application as the code pen that was being used in our previous demos from last month. Yeah, and so as you can see, the template is basically the same. We have an app.vue component, SFC, that is loading in a child component. It has a static collection of data. And then in that child component, we just simply loop through the data that's being passed in via a prop. And so this should look pretty familiar to most people that tagged along for the last session. But if there are any questions, I'd like to hear them.
Chris, are you able to easily switch back to the code pen of that real quick? I don't know if you still have that up. Awesome.
Sorry, hold on.
So when we looked at, when Chris was showing the code pen of this, if you can scroll down to Chris on the scroll down to the other, yeah, perfect. The template there. So Chris mentioned the benefits of single file components here. Is that when you're looking at this code, which is without using Vue CLI, without using the single file components, it's the same exact code that Chris has over in Code Sandbox, but it becomes very hard to do anything like syntax highlighting. Because like Chris mentioned, this is just a template literal. So it's just
I have to say that's actually not true.
What? Oh, sorry.
Because, okay, so like when I do I actually use the Vue components for the email HTML.
Oh, sure.
And Vue VS Code actually has a plugin that does the highlighting.
And we'll pick it out of the
yes. It makes it much more. It's better. I'm like for a bigger project, like Chris is saying, this is not the way to go because it's not readable. Right. And I have people looking at my code and they're like, they're not used to reading it. And I'm working with a junior developer, and this is like just too much, right? So I'm actually thinking about switching it over to single file components just because they just find it hard to read. And I have been living like this for 3 months, so I don't even think about it. But I realize it's harder for other people. Even the Vue developers that are used to using Vue, they're just not used to seeing it this way.
Like like this one who assumes that it's not going to syntax highlight.
Yeah. Well, I looked at it because I was like, I can't deal with this. But anyway, so we found a plugin. But anyway, so there is syntax highlighting, but it's more than just that. Yeah. It's really not hard. It's really difficult to follow unless you're really used to doing it. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. Thank you. But yeah, that is definitely one of the first things that just gets really noticeable is, oh my gosh, like I can actually see my errors in my editor.
Right. And one more thing I want to say is like not losing the CSS, like having to have global CSS and losing the CSS. And if you think about a front end, like I would say like 75% of front end code is probably CSS in the end anyway, or a huge chunk of it. And so losing that CSS from that component, I find it really difficult. And so that's to me is like the biggest benefit is to have all my JavaScript, have all my HTML, and have all my CSS in one component. And I'm not hunting all over the world to try to find it. So.
Cool. Okay. So maybe no question. So the first thing that we wanted to do as an exercise, which I started to give away, was taking this example that we were doing in our last session, in our last workshop, and then converting this in Code Sandbox to a Vue CLI 3 project using SFCs. So what you'll want to do is go to Code Sandbox, make sure you're logged in. And if you guys could give people the link, that would be very appreciated.
So Tracy linked the code pen, and then do you want people to create a fresh Code Sandbox, or should we? Cool.
Yep. So if you create a fresh Code Sandbox, and then and then basically what you're doing is you're walking through this code and implementing it one piece at a time into a Vue CLI project.
Oh, can you go through the JavaScript? Can you highlight where the components are? Because that's another thing people find difficult too.
I think I can actually probably just do this.
Sure.
People can do it at the same time.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Let's see here.
That's another complaint about that way is the way that you do the components.
I'm gonna try to beat Chris while he's doing it.
Yeah, no, I was thinking
you should all try to beat Chris.
I like that. I like that idea.
I think this is what I actually done in my slides. Enough. So we're going to have our app.vue. That's not going to change. Our hello world is going to be organizers. Oh, wait. That's not right. To do that. So I'm just going to remove this code. And I'm just basically removing as much of the code as possible. Right, so we have a to-do that's really, really simple. And then in our app, we want to import that to-do component. And there's a key components, which is going to reference those components that we're using. And then in our template, I'm going to replace that with to-do. Did you give them the link, Andy Cassidy?
Yeah. Okay. Tracy should have the code bin link there.
So I'm basically just pasting in code at this point. And for the individual components, we want to use Pascal case. And we need data. So this is when we start digging into the JavaScript. The data is also copy pastable. It should be. Okay. So now we're seeing our title, which is good. And there's a console down here at the bottom. If you click on it, you can see your warnings and errors. So for the to-do, we have a template. I'm going to copy paste that first. Okay. Save. And then it's expecting a prop of to-do, or item, I guess, in this case. Which I think I changed this later on. Save that, and then we have something. I'm going to stop here. Curious how everyone else is doing.
I take it back. I'm not going to beat you. In
In
fact, I made very little progress.
Did it ever show up? Did it ever show up? Jack, for some reason, couldn't see any of the code.
I have some issues with the code pen that I'm seeing.
Okay. That's okay. We're going to have the solution, and we're going to start people from there. So yeah, it is okay.
I was impressed with the speed of that, Chris. It was very good.
I've done it a few times.
I'll try to beat you on the next one.
So yeah, at this point, I would start to copy paste in CSS. And obviously, one thing that's nice is you can compartmentalize your CSS into individual SFCs. Cool. I'm going to go back to the slides. I promise the next exercise will be better. But let me give people the solution.
I sent it out.
Okay,
I sent it out.
Okay, cool.
I actually did that behind the scenes while you all were working. I wish.
Let me just get rid of some of these tabs here. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I can get back on track. So the next thing we're going to talk about is two-way binding. And when we talk about two-way binding, for the most part, we usually talk about what's known as vModel. So vModel is a Vue directive. It helps simplify two-way binding by standardizing how data is bound. So here on the left, we see what is the standard usage for vModel, where we have an assignment, and it's just a simple data key. So this would be something in our data storage. On the right, what we see is essentially the shorthand, what the shorthand is doing. This is something a little bit more verbose, and where we have an internal data item that is bound to something called model value. And that's for displaying the data's value. And then in addition, the input is this input element is listening for an update event from the input element. And those events are something that we'll talk about later on tonight. But the result of that event is then assigning those changes back to the data. So the verbose example should help make it a little bit more clear. But essentially, this is all you need to do, and then have a data item in your data storage, and that's it. So here's just expanding on that a little bit. This is a slightly different way. Here we have a number of form inputs, each with Vue models, and you can see that each is bound to keys in our local data storage. So when the input updates, the data storage updates. And then likewise, if the data storage changes by any means, the input's displayed value will also change. So thus, two-way binding. So there are a lot of internals within Vue to not only make this happen, but to make it happen extremely fast in a really performant way, and then with so little syntax. So if there are no questions about
Can I just say one thing real quick?
Yeah,
the big thing about Vue 3 is Vue 2 or the previous versions of Vue, you could only have one V model in a component, in a single file component. And
that's right.
Vue 3, you can have like 10 if that's what you want.
Yep.
And so that's like there's other things that are done on forms that are big ones, but that's a really big one.
Yeah, it's by far, I think, one of the coolest new features. Pretty much everyone that's done Vue 2 code, especially anything having to do with forms, has at some point run into the problem of needing more than one V model in a single component. And so, yeah, that's a huge feature benefit. I don't need to go through this again. So for the two-way data binding example, what I want people to do is take this code sandbox. And as you'll see, each of the meetup to-do list items has an input to the right of them. And as you type in that input, you'll see your data item change. So this isn't exactly something really useful for a to-do application, but it's about as generic as I could think of to do for a Vue model. So with that, I will pause. Reiterate with this. If you go to the to-do Vue component in the link that was sent out, obviously for each of these projects as you're doing exercises. I don't think you should be able to save over our work, but I've been trying to include just small instructions on each one.
I did it.
Yes, Jack.
Hey, Jack.
So proud of myself.
You should be.
Thank you.
I just went to the solution.
It's very satisfying to see
I was done before you started.
This is a good demo because it's very satisfying to
see it work.
Well, to see it work, but to do it in a child component and only worry about it in that one place, and then all of a sudden it automatically works in all 5 places that show up. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sorry about the styling. I am not a CSS nerd.
That wasn't the point. The point of this is not styling.
We'll put Tracy in charge of that next time, regardless.
I apologize ahead of time.
That was my styling. I didn't want to get worked up about it. Oh, not the input, right? Okay, I probably would have done something about that, but it's still, it's not the point, right?
Yeah.
Not the point. Of course, when Ben does his hackathon, I know it's going to be all beautiful, and he's going to have animation and transitions, and he's going to have all kinds of fancy stuff.
We're all just.
He's more of a live coding session. I don't know how much animation I'll prepare for that.
We're all just going to do Tailwind 2.0, so we won't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I saw the announcement recently.
I don't like it. Yeah.
They had a killer video. They went all in on the video. It was
really?
There's a lot of, I mean, it's good. It's very well done. They picked some, I would call it epic soundtrack music.
Yeah, I've used Tailwind. I don't like it. I feel like it's just cumbersome. I guess if you're not really good at CSS, it makes sense. But I just feel like that a lot of times you can write it faster and better than that stuff will give you. But although it's great for prototypes.
It's good for teams. Like when it comes to scaling CSS, it has a good mental model, I would say, as someone who likes writing all my CSS from scratch.
Yeah.
There are things I definitely borrow from it.
But what I remember from Tailwind is you add a bunch of different classes to whatever you're doing, and they felt like they weren't semantic. I guess that's where I really, at least
different ways to approach it.
Okay, it's just the way that I've done it. So
yeah, you might not like the way that you were shown how to do it.
Right, exactly. So
all right, I think I'm going to move forward. I think it's probably enough time. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's just look at the one that I had written, which is definitely not going to be great or perfect, but gets the point. One thing I've noticed with Code Sandbox is it is a little slow. But all we have to do is look at our to-do.
Jack, did you just try to beat me? Okay. Oh, no, never mind. Sorry. I thought you said
I would never.
Okay, never mind.
So in my case, all I've done is added an input with type equals text. We have v model that is tied to a to-do title data key. And so in our storage, we just have to-do title bound to this .to-do.title, which is coming in via props. And so, yeah. And then the last thing that's kind of tricky is to make sure that the thing that's being displayed is also referring to that same data key. I hope that makes sense to people.
Makes sense to me.
Nice.
Show it work.
Oh, yeah, show it work.
Show it work.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very satisfying.
All right. I'll move on. So the next thing we like to cover is event handling. So in Vue, we use the v-on directive to listen to events from the DOM. In this case, we have a listener for a click. And as you can see, there's also a shorthand for this of just @click. And then the method name refers to a method within our SFC called method name in this case. And so in this particular case, all method name is doing is just saying this.showOrganizers. Set it to whatever the event target value is. So probably true or false. I think that's what this was, Tracy, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't actually set up this one, but just wanted to show this in another form, a slightly other form, that you don't have to use a method. You can actually just put full JavaScript expressions inside of handler and then skip the handler altogether and put some of that logic there. And what's nice is, so we've looked at click, but there are a whole bunch of DOM events available to us. And I don't know if all of these are available to us, but I'm pretty sure it's native. Is that true or false, Ben? Do you know?
I should know, but don't. I think it's almost all.
Yeah, I would think.
Sorry, what was that?
We've used plenty.
Well, I would think that you can put almost any event name in.
Yep.
And they're all. It's just native, right?
Yeah, the idea is to, again, just apply enough syntactical sugar to make things easy for you to access what would normally be like plain JavaScript. Yeah. So mouse enter, mouse leave, those sort of things.
Cool. So that's all you really should need to know for this. So for this exercise, first let's watch the animation. So as I'm typing in a to-do, and then I hit enter, I see to-do is added. And then as I type in a different one, and I click on the drop down and change it. Sorry, the animation's really
You're a slow typist.
I am not that slow. Okay, so let's look at the code sandbox. And so this is going to be the first drastic change in design. If we open up app.vue, I have some instructions at the top. So what you'll see is that we're now adding a form to our application. There's a form element in here. And what I'd like you to do is first add two V models, now that we're all experts at V models. One for the what needs to be done input, and then another one for the priority dropdown, the select element. And in both of those cases, you're using the same methodology that we saw in the last exercise. You're creating two-way binding to data keys that actually already exist in our data. We have a title and a priority. And then after that, to get into the events, I want you to add a submit event listener to our form element, and then handle that submit event with a add to do method that is already provided to you. And then bonus points, if what you'll find is that when you type in an item and hit submit, that this text stays the same. So bonus points to those who figure out how to clear that out.
I love bonus points.
On a text input, when you hit enter, obviously that's a native thing in most browsers to submit a form, assuming that you have something that is of type is equal to submit, which we do. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
And if I do medium, okay, cool. So yeah, so we were adding two V models, pretty easy. We have one here and we have one here. And so those are, as you're changing your inputs, your form elements, those are changing the data. And then we have just simply @submit and a method that it's referring, that is handling that submit event.
Interesting. You put your prevent on the in the method.
We're getting there, Tracy. Don't give
Sorry.
God.
Sorry.
Well, no, let's spin it. Let's spin it. It looks interesting that you put prevent default on within the method.
This is how you normally would handle an event in
JavaScript. Yeah. Interesting.
So anyway, so that's that. So if there's no questions, actually there is.
Yeah, I have a question. Why did you know?
Oh, we have a Q&A. So from Dash, I've never used an app.vue the way you are here. No, Dash, this is great. Instead, I'd put most of that in the main HTML file and then only use Vue to build the to-do component. Is the structure you are using tonight based on the Vue CLI?
That's correct. Yeah, so that was at the beginning of our workshop. And so what we're using now is the Vue CLI, pretty standard setup inside of Code Sandbox, and single file components rather than having just a single HTML file and a single CSS. So, yep.
Yeah, so if you, slides and everything will be available afterward. But you can also go to Code Sandbox if you were to just create a new one. Just say create new Vue 3, like, it'll give you some presets. The one that it'll start you with is basically the result of just creating a new project with Vue CLI. Yeah.
Yep. So you just go to create sandbox and then hit Vue 3, and you don't have to do anything else. But I do, at the beginning of the talk, I do talk about setting it up on your local system as well.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. So the next thing we're going to talk about, Tracy, is event modifiers.
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
You're good. No problem. So event modifiers allow us to move event-specific logic that we would normally have within an event handler method, and instead add them to our directives as a postfix. So that's denoted by a dot. And so this heavily simplifies missed a T. This simplifies the handler methods as they don't have to worry about the type of event that is triggering them, and you can just simply have that logic right on the element itself. So in this case, we have an event.prevent default. We would normally use this to make sure that the page doesn't refresh when you're submitting the form. But we can instead, we can remove that line and just listen to the submit event with this event modifier of .prevent. And then we can actually remove the event.prevent default function. So here are some other examples. These are coming straight from the Vue docs. Thank you, Ben. So like before, any type of event handling you would normally do, it can probably be taken care of with event modifiers. And so there's a whole swath of these available to us. These are not things that are just natively included, like the DOM event, the event listeners were. They have to be specifically coded in Vue, and there are reasons for that. But you can see that we can actually chain multiple modifiers together. We could have just the modifier just prevent this form from submitting and do nothing else. As you can see, there's keyboard modifiers and system level modifiers and even mouse modifiers. So there's a full list on the Vue docs, and I don't know if I gave you guys a link for that. But.
More of a comment than a question.
Sure.
Can you go back to?
Well, actually,
if you this list, especially the last example Chris gave of the keyboard modifiers is just really nice. Like it's a very nice convenience factor, because otherwise every time that we'd want to check like handle the escape key this time or the delete key, we'd be Googling what are the key codes for the escape and the delete key.
Exactly.
So this definitely feels like one of the nice, Vue user/dev focused nice to haves that are just a really nice thing to have.
Yeah, and that said, there is a key code modifier as well, so you can actually just punt in something totally random that Vue is not natively supporting. But so pretty much anything. Okay, great. So since Reinhardt didn't have a question, I'm just kidding. So let's look at the animation. So what's happening here is I am typing very slowly. Apparently, no, it's just Keynote performance. And so as I tab to the dropdown, I'm hitting Enter while I'm on the dropdown. And that's not something that's natively supported in Firefox. If you tab to the dropdown in Firefox and you hit the Enter key, literally nothing happens. The form is not submitted. So we're going to be adding that event modifier. And also in the text input, I am just typing a whole bunch of spaces and then clicking submit. And you'll notice that the to-do item is not being added. So if we go to our sandbox, I can actually demo this, I think. So if I do a whole bunch of spaces and I hit submit, you can see that an empty item is being added. And so you could go out of your way to write some fancy regex. Who wants to learn that? I'm kidding. It's really useful. But regex can definitely take care of this with an if statement. But since we have event modifiers available to us, there's one in particular that we can use here that will, on our V model, that will fix this problem. So just following through the instructions one more time, we want to replace our add to do's event prevent default. We want to remove that. I didn't mention that earlier. Sorry. But you saw this in the slide, so it should be pretty straightforward. So we want to remove the command event prevent default and instead have our event modifier on the form element. We want to trim that white space when we try to submit the form. And again, when keyboard focusing to the dropdown, so if I keyboard focus to the dropdown and see I'm changing it and I'm still focused on it, if I hit enter, you can see that nothing happens. And so we want to add a event modifier to our dropdown so that the form will still submit. I hope that makes sense. Cool.
Definitely. Why is everyone crapping on regex?
I actually love regex. Regex is a lot of fun. I actually love to see us do a talk on it. It's useful.
But we can find plenty of memes saying that it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's just my only concerns around regex are just like when it gets complicated, sometimes it's harder to read than some other code. We have I'll paste a link to it.
Regex 101.
Yeah, there's a lot of different good regex sites, but at Politico we have one that we like using a lot because it works well for saving them for future reference. And so pretty much in our case, whenever we have regexes in our code or regexes, we will ask that the developer links to one of these examples because it's super easy to save one. Just as a comment.
That's actually what we use too.
Yeah, we like it a lot. Sorry, it's probably Brian instituting it in both cases. Brian works with Chris and I right now.
No, I instituted it.
All right, Brian stole it from Tracy.
I don't know. I think we probably did it separately. Whatever. Yeah. Because I'm just bad at regexes, so I just have to,
Yeah, and
they're easy. They're so easy to get it wrong, and just like it's easy to think that you've got it right and it be so wrong. So.
I don't know if Jack just mentioned this, but we've been telling people to put it in literally in the comments, just link straight to regex 101.
Yeah.
With your test case. Yeah, it's super useful.
All right, I'm done. So it took me a little bit.
Nice. You found the secret modifier that I didn't tell anyone about.
I did, but honestly, it took me a little bit. So
I actually have it in my notes to tell people, but since we're a small group, that'd be fun to see if people figure it out.
You really tried to see if Jack could figure it out.
I had to use the Google, and then it led me to Ben's work in the docs, and so I don't really know if I trust it.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
If only I had just been taken to some blog, then I know it was trustworthy.
Those docs are really good, though, I have to say.
We don't
always room for improvement.
Oh, but they are really good.
They're very good.
All right.
Ready?
Let's look at the solution. Nice. Thanks, Tracy.
Mm-hmm. The least I can do.
Let's just go from top to bottom. So we have our form submit, and we've added .prevent. And so now in our add to do, we can see that we no longer need our prevent.default. Prevent default, excuse me. It's as simple as that. For the white space issue, the one I was asking for people to find was .trim. So yeah, this should work. I don't know everything about .trim and everything that it kills, but I'm assuming it's only white space. That's usually what trim does. And then for the dropdown, yeah, like you can actually add key modifiers to something like this, so that when a keyboard is focused on any particular element, it will actually listen for a key up and a .enter, and then fire off the same event that happens on submit.
Wait, what was the issue with Firefox you were talking about? We don't support Firefox, so I don't pay attention to it. So
yeah, so well, I don't know if it's an issue, as it may be a native DOM thing. I think it's probably a native DOM thing. But if I go to this form element, so I'm on the dropdown and I hit submit, I don't think it usually will actually fire off the submit event.
okay.
So it's a pretty rare case, but I thought it was interesting. All right.
Nice.
So let's talk about custom events. So custom events allows us to define the name of an event and make them on our own rather than relying on what the DOM provides to us. So for example, take this parent component. It is listening to a child component for a custom event called event-name. When that event is triggered, it fires method name, which is a method in our methods. So the difference here is that this child component is a Vue component, and it can be anything we want it to be. So in the child component, we have a method that is emitting this event to the parent, and it can actually also include a payload, which is any JavaScript stuff, any JavaScript magic that we want to reach all the way down to this method in our parent component. Second example, we have a person form child component that is listening for a form to be submitted, which we've done. It's setting up a payload, which I was just talking about. This is just a person object. And then it shoots off this event to anything that's listening to this person submitted custom event. And then that triggers this method to fire, finally pushing this person into a collection of people. Thank you, Tracy, for this example. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. I thought I had one more thing. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a lot, right? Like, it's the thing about events is like this is stuff that is built into browsers forever, and there's even a lot more to this than is even being shown here. But the ability to compartmentalize your code and have it just dumbly fire off something, and you're basically scripting what that something is, and then other components can just listen for them. So whether they're firing them off and nobody's listening or not doesn't really matter.
So we have a question from Wendell regarding whether or not there can be multiple receivers of the event.
Absolutely.
I.e. broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So since person form is a single file component, there could be multiple person forms, or if it was something less specifically described, it could just be form, for instance. You could have multiple parents listening to that form. So yeah, definitely.
And then I guess just to clarify the window, are you also referring to the fact that like you would like to do like a universal trigger, like person form emits a form that hits all over the app, for example, not just the parent, for example?
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't going to get into like the doing like a custom event system or anything like that. But
no, yeah, I don't think. I just want to make sure if we answered Wendell's question, because
Yeah,
I
you
think
definitely
there's two ways to
can.
interpret it.
Mhm.
But yeah, Wendell, if you could clarify how, like, again, if you're thinking like when someone adds an item to a cart that it echoes an event that multiple components know to update, for example, then that would be a different answer than what Chris was mentioning.
Yeah, because you can have, you can create a more global event system, and then your event listening logic is sort of sectioned off from everything. And we're not doing that here, but for a future topic for sure.
Yes, and at that point, you probably should be considering a global state management system.
That's what I was just thinking. I was thinking of Vuex, and yeah,
exactly.
GPS receiver obtain position. Yeah, that sounds like state management to me, not events.
I agree. Yeah, and in this case, what we're looking at is just the idea that you have a parent and a child, and the child has logic to itself, and it doesn't really care about the rest of the application.
Yep.
It's just broadcasting out signals, emitting signals. And if someone's listening, great. If they're not, that's fine too. But in this particular case, if the child does not have a parent, it won't be heard by anybody. There has to be a parent-child relationship in this case.
Cool.
Awesome. So in this final example, we can see that, per usual, an item very slowly is being typed in.
You are a slow typist.
It's not me. The form is submitted, and the item is added to the list. The difference here is that this add a to-do form is no longer in our app.vue. Instead, it's a child component. And so when the form is submitted, we want the root application where the to-do list is to hear it. So let's look at the sandbox. And if we go to, I think, app.vue. So the child component has already been set up. All you're doing is you're adding a custom event to the add to do.vue component, which is in here. So that event will be emitted when the form is submitted, passing it along the form's fields in a payload, a to-do object. And then in the app.vue, you want to listen for that custom event, and then trigger the add to do method, which is still here, just in a much simpler form now. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So if we look at add to do, you can see all of our form is basically in here verbatim, how we just built it. And the only thing that's changed a little bit is the submit handler. And I just left a comment in here. This is where you should do it. And then here's that bonus point thing, resetting the form after submitting.
Gasp.
See how fast Jack can do it. I think I'm going to time you, Jack.
Oh, no. Okay. All right. Here we go.
Hat tip, Reinhardt. Thank you for the comment. Really appreciate it. Yeah, we miss everybody. I miss seeing people in person.
Oh, I know. So am I. We have another 6 months of this, though, I think, right?
Yeah, we're June now, so something like that.
Yeah. So, but you have people going into the office, right? Like, so do we, but
I think a pretty small number, probably, but
like they have like a sales and those kind of people.
People that need to be there, sure.
Yeah, but
I saw a great picture from election night of the few people that were there, and having done a lot of elections myself,
Right.
It was just bizarre to see like all the TVs on and there's like
Nobody there.
a huddle of like 15 people, very important people, but like still, it's just so weird to see. And everybody's wearing a mask and they're all socially distanced, which is great.
Wow, that's amazing.
But it was just really odd.
Yeah.
Odd year.
Yeah. So yeah, we had our craziness because since I do legal stuff, the Supreme Court, that's our big thing, right? And so with the Supreme Court hearings for the newest justice, and that was just, oh my gosh, that's where all our action was. So yeah. But I really liked your map though. Did you tell your interactive guys how that map was awesome? Or the prediction?
Yeah, they did well.
Yeah, that was really good.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
I haven't told them yet your comment, but
yeah. But I'm not kidding. The news developers at Bloomberg, we just kept looking at that, trying to figure out what was going to happen. Nice. We really enjoyed it actually. So yeah.
I think both on night one, on the first night of the election, I think both Nates were looking like they were struggling because both the polling looked off and there was the thing where the New York Times needle showed Georgia as almost guaranteed one way or something like that, guaranteed Republican. But then I think they both came out of it looking pretty good because the needles ended up working out pretty accurately after they made that one adjustment, and then the it fell within the models for 538. So anyway, a decent year for the Nates also.
Yeah, you all had Arizona declared quickly. I think quicker than others did.
Yeah, because I think as soon as AP calls, I think Politico can call.
Yeah. A lot of companies like us use AP. The AP feed, and so when they call something, you have to go out of your way to override it if you don't.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I did it.
All right.
You done, Jack?
I was done way earlier. I was.
You should have told me that because
So just take whatever. What time do you have for me? You have 5 seconds, or you have
No, I have 3 minutes and 20 seconds. But
cool. Well, I'd say probably just subtract 3 minutes from that then.
Okay.
That should be,
sure.
That should be pretty accurate.
All right, we ready for the solution?
All right, here we go. The final solution.
Rephrase.
I hope people got it. Okay, let's see. So if I add an item and I change the thing and I hit enter, it works. And I add a different item and I hit submit, it works. And if I do it from here, it works. Cool.
Magical.
So let's look at our child component, the emitter. So we have our add to do form, excuse me, and on submit, preventing with an event modifier, we have an on submit method. It's collecting together our to do object based on V models, bringing it all together here. We can check for stuff like this, but we actually don't need this anymore. And then it emits an event called to do submitted, resetting the form quickly afterwards. And then if we look at app.vue, we can see that on app.vue, we have our single add form listening for this to do submitted custom event. It's then firing off the add to do handler, which has not been changed. And that's it, guys. Are there any questions from anybody?
Nice.
Thank you all for staying around. I really appreciate it. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah, nice job.
Thanks, guys.
It's like a full app.
It's like
you made it to do app.
It needs to be more, and we will make it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the part one is obviously entirely available now. We'll have this sandbox collection up soon for people to watch. It's also on YouTube, and this will be up on YouTube as well. Check out
And
the
the
docs.
slides.
Ask Ben questions. He's in Discord. He's the docs god.
No, that's too far. Not the
Oh,
just
wow, you got
one
promoted.
of many
Wow,
team members.
I thought you were a minor deity. I didn't realize you got promoted. Wow.
Not get promoted. Just I
Well, aren't you
get to review
replacing-
PRs.
Well, you replaced Chris Fritz, and he was the god,
No,
so maybe.
Definitely not replacing Chris. No one could ever replace Chris. Looks like Brian does have a question though. Why does it look like the listener is hidden in the template instead of down in the script?
Can you go back to that, Chris?
Just a second. I was getting ready to shut off all my windows. Let's see. So what exactly are you describing?
So the @to do submitted, right? It's on line 4. Yep.
Yeah.
This is correct. Instead of down in the script. So yeah, that's connected to the @to do,
Right.
Brian, from line 4 down to line 28.
Yeah.
That's how that's connected.
So this is listening for this custom event that we've just come up with called to do
Right.
submitted, which is being emitted here. So this is this dot emit. Did I go over this dot emit? I don't know.
I thought you did.
I thought I did too. I don't think I explained it the way that I wanted to.
I mean, this is just a common way for the child to talk to the parent, right? There's really no, there's other ways, but it's a common way when you're doing this kind of stuff for the child to talk to a parent.
And the other idea here is that we want app.vue to have our data store so that it can then pass off data to other children. And so the only way, not the only way, but the way that we need to do that is to send that data from a child, because this to do form doesn't really care. After it's been submitted, it doesn't really care about that information anymore. So it's just emitting that information down and letting somebody else handle it. In this case, our app.vue. And then it's collecting that data here so that it can then pass it to, say, to do.
Right. And so to Brian's answer, correct. The reason why it's on line 4 and not like inside of script where you might do like a this dot on to do submitted, for example, which is probably what you're thinking.
That's right.
Is because it does make a declarative, like makes it very explicit that like you're listening for this event on this component and expecting this data. Otherwise, theoretically, you actually can't tell if you just do a this dot on to do submitted. Theoretically, that can come from anywhere. So that's one of the nice things about having it inside of the template is that it is declarative and explicit. So yeah, you could have multiple.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say multi-listeners, are you saying you could have multiple events emitted from the component, or are you saying that like, okay, yes, the to-do app. The to-do Vue component can emit as many events as it needs to handle different use cases.
Just JavaScript in general.
Yep. But it doesn't go outside of it. I thought that might be the other question. So if you have a separate component called like list.view, you can't suddenly tackle that.
Yeah, the only way that to do is getting any data is because it's being passed up from the app as a prop. But this has no understanding of an add to do form. It has no clue what that is, and that's purposeful. It keeps this completely on its own. Just like Jack was saying in an earlier example, we can add individual bits of code here, and it will affect all the to dos, which is exactly what we want it to do. I didn't say that twice. That's not a pun.
Keeps it modular. You're right, Brian.
Yep.
But yeah, that's single file components, which we also went over. Yay.
Cool.
Awesome. I will send it off for trivia time if we have it. Do we have trivia?
What does this mean? I don't know.
Carrot?
That's
Who?
killing me.
Very nice.
Got it.
Yes.
So the real takeaway here is that Chris, the
Fancy words.
only excitement he deserved tonight was leading a very good and excellent presentation. But instead, y'all let him win trivia also. So
Oh man.
it's a
I'd like
Really?
to thank my mom.
sure. Keep going, please.
No.
Jack for rigging it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I told Chris 5 out of the 6 answers, and he only got 3 of them right.
When are you going to give me 5 out of the 6 answers? All right, next time I want more soccer stuff. So that I can
more
get it
soccer.
right.
But you got the golf one. You got the golf.
I did, but then I screwed up Auckland, and then I hit I said I wasn't thinking. I hit Austria.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Very nicely played.
Yep.
Brad.
Nice job.
Brad correctly predicted his fading at the end, but still made the podium. Good for Brad.
Yep.
And thank you again to Chris for an excellent,
thanks, Chris.
excellent workshop.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And obviously, throw questions in Discord.
Thanks, everybody, for joining.